Mr. Ford, I'll probably get the pronunciation wrong, but I believe your real name is Sean O'Fean, is it, or Fine? How Irish are you? Are you 100% Irish?
Oh, centuries back. O'Fean.
O'Fean.
Sean O'Fean.
When did you come to America?
I was born here.
What sort of a childhood did you have? Were you interested in movies way back?
Not really. I'm not interested in them now, actually. It's a way of making a living. No, oh, I don't know. Occasionally go to movies, and I wasn't particular. I wasn't what you call an aficionado or anything like that.
I suspect that a lot of your scripts are very improvised, and I believe that one of the arch exponents of this was Will Rogers. Can you tell me about him?
Well, you make a statement and ask a question. A lot of my scripts are improvised. Exactly what do you mean by that?
That you start with basic material and then work around it.
Well, I think any good director would do that. I mean, a script is a skeleton that you work on. If it's a good script, you do it, I mean, verbatim. But how often do you get a script that you can do verbatim? I mean, I remember once upon a time, I mean, the so-called producer and the writer was a very dear friend of mine. He says, "This is the greatest script I've ever written." He says, "Jack, I want you to promise me now that you'll do this word for word." I said, "I solemnly swear I will do it word for word." So I did this script, did this picture. We only went 5 weeks over schedule. And it came out when the first cut was 18 reels.
How did you first strike up your lifelong association with John Wayne?
Well, number one is not lifelong. I've known Duke as we call him, about 30 years. He was my third assistant prop man. Then he became the second prop man. He finally worked himself up to prop man. And we started to do Stagecoach, and everybody turned it down. I had to peddle it around. And finally, Walter Wayne said, he says, "Well, you got a picture?" He says, I said, "What, a Western?" He said, "Well, go ahead and do it." He said, "Who do you want to use for a lead?" I says, "I've got a kid here. He's just out of college. I've used him in several bits, and he's very good. Big, tall, handsome guy. And I'd like to make a test of him, show it to you." He said, "Well, if you say it's okay, okay, and I'll make the test." So I made a test of him. He says, "Yeah, go ahead, great." So Walter went off to Europe, and we made the picture with Duke, and that sort of started him off. But we've always been very friendly, and I'm the godfather of all of his children, and he has many, and his grandchildren, of which he has more. So we're very close.
I'm afraid you're going to hate this question, but I do want to ask you about courage. Would you say that courage was something that one acquired or something that one was born with?
Well, how do you expect me to answer that?
Because your work, your films, are full of courageous people. Your activities in the war are full of courage. And you've chronicled some of the most historically courageous incidents in history. You do seem to be interested in courage.
I don't know. I've tried to figure it out. I am really a coward. I know I am. So that's why I did foolish things. And I was decorated 8 or 9 times. Trying to prove that I was not a coward. But after it's all over, I still know that I was a coward. I've always found out the little quiet little man that nobody pays any attention to usually has more guts. Can you use guts from BBC?
Sure.
Has more guts and courage than the big blowhard, the big noisy, the big outspoken fellow. It's the little man that does the courageous thing.
Your films often depict bloodshed and violence, and yet I get the feeling that you hate violence. Can you explain this?
I do. And my pictures do not always show violence. Very, very few of them do. And if they do show violence, it's over very quickly. I suggest it more than anything else. I never show a long sequence, with violence. I do it quickly, or I do it by suggestion. I hate violence in pictures just as much as I do these sex and incest and all the things that are going on now.
You've given me a very good example this afternoon of your wit, your ability as a storyteller and a raconteur. Some people who I've spoken to about you said that you were a bit eccentric, but a very nice guy.
A bit eccentric?
Yes. How do you see yourself? Do you think
you mean when I shave in the morning? I shudder with horror. A bit eccentric. I wouldn't know how to define it. I know what you mean by eccentric. How am I eccentric? In what way?
I don't know. One or two people have said what a great sense of humour you had, and that you were a great wit, and that you loved telling jokes, which I think we've seen great evidence of here this afternoon.
But eccentric, and what? I don't know what you mean by eccentric. Everybody has a little eccentricity in their character, I believe. But if you ask me to define it, I don't know in what way I'm eccentric. Probably because I'm very courteous to my equals, more than courteous to my inferiors. I'm speaking in terms of pictures. And I'm horribly rude to my superiors, so-called. So that's probably what they mean by eccentric.
Difficult question, but would you say you were an optimist or a pessimist?
Neither. It's a job of work. It's a nice, easy way of making a living.
Easy?
Yes.
Movie making easy?
Yes.
Well, you're the first person I've ever spoken to who said that.
As we say, if I may drop into the vernacular, it's a piece of pie. It's simple. I've retired for a year. I've never worked so hard in all my life. I work from morning until night. Fortunately, today is Saturday. I go to that office and there's scripts and there's letters and there's phone calls from New York and London and Paris and all over. And I work like a dog. The result is that I'm going to retire from retirement. I'm going back to work for a vacation. Now, making films, it's fun. It's not hard work. You can make it hard work if you want to. I know people that go crazy. That's trying to make a film. I always thought it was a lot of fun. I never cared that much. They hand you a script and I read it and turn it back and I say, all right, I'm under contract. I'm supposed to make, it's a lousy picture and it's a lousy story and it's going to make a lousy picture, but if you want me to do it, they says, well, it's already booked. Do you mind? I said, I'll do the best I can with it, and it always turns out bad. But I'm neither a pessimist or an optimist.